Prime Minister Ehud, it gives me such great pleasure to introduce you to the elite of America, as well as a few students. And I want to begin by acknowledging something. Every journalist and every interviewer always tries to build themselves up. And I really need to humble myself because I need to deliver an apology. It's part of how I've been acting differently over the last 4 months. You invited me to participate in the most amazing experience of my life when you were giving a speech in Washington, D.C. to a joint session of Congress. And
That's right.
Our mutual friend, Mort Zuckerman, says to me, would you go over and provide your guidance and your wisdom to the Prime Minister? And my mother was so proud. My mother felt it was like, if I'd been a Catholic, it was like advising the Pope. And she decided that all my Hebrew education, all my Sunday school, everything that I had done had worked up to this day. And I get to the airport and I'm flying Air France and I missed the plane. And I am so sorry. This was the greatest honor of my life. This was the pinnacle of my career. And I actually missed the plane to get to Israel.
But Frank, may I interfere? It's a great introduction and it flatters me a lot. But the truth is that you did help me a lot, I have to say. You did help me a lot because we still had time to discuss the speech. And I honestly, I was acquainted with the American political scene before. I visited America 100 times before, and I met with congressmen and senators. But speaking to a joint session of Congress as a prime minister of the state of Israel was something entirely different. And I needed the experience, the sensitivities, the subtleties, which you have. And you gave me some great advice, and I was very happy with what you achieved. And I say to many people that congratulated me after the speech that actually you share with me that success. So don't feel. I hope that at a time you could say to your mother that you have fulfilled a dream.
Well, she was watching as it happened, and I was sitting up in the gallery with Sharon Sur, who is a mutual friend of ours, and we counted every standing ovation. And I want people on this call to know that at the time that you gave that speech, you got more standing ovations than any foreign leader had ever received before Congress. And I counted every one of them, and I was not happy, and I could not sit back and breathe until you set the all-time record, which you did. And
Thank you.
And I'm
Thank you
of
very
all
much.
the speeches, was that of everything that you delivered, you had wartime speeches, you had a speech which I will quote because it was so beautiful in Northern Ireland about conflict resolution. But of every speech you gave, was that one the most significant to you?
There are actually two. This is one of them. And the reason is that this was the first time that I appeared as a prime minister of Israel in a joint session of Congress, which is the most distinguished stage in the world. And I spoke, and it was broadcasted live in America and everywhere. And this was the first opportunity I had as a prime minister of the state of Israel to share with the world, with our region, with the leaders in our region, but also with the leaders in America, which is very important for us. What is my view? What is my plan? What am I going to do as prime minister, especially on the most, what I consider to be the most important issue in our lives, and this is peace with the Palestinians. And I think, if I can recall now that you asked me, and I didn't think about it, but I think that I said I came here and I stretched my hand to offer peace to the Palestinians. I still think that this message is the most significant and the most important message and the most important issue in the life of Israel. And talking about, I say this is one of two. The other speech was at the Annapolis Conference. Now, the Annapolis Conference, which was convened in the end of November 2007, organized by President Bush and Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, it was a most unbelievable event. The President of the United States hosting on the stage, the President of the Palestinian Authority, the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, together, speaking to the whole world, and in the room were 57 foreign ministers of all the Muslim and Arab countries in the world. There were more, but all of the Arab and Muslim countries in the world. This was a very unique, one at a history maybe event in the context of the Israeli-Palestinian efforts to reach an agreement. Subsequently, this was called the Annapolis process. The truth is that we started negotiating a year before. So it was in the middle of the effort that Dr. Mahmoud Abbas and myself did at that time in order to reach an agreement. But this was something very special because the foreign minister of Saudi Arabia, the foreign minister of all the Arab countries, the foreign minister of Muslim countries, except for Iran. By the way, even a Syrian deputy foreign minister participated. And they all applauded to both of us, which was really quite an extraordinary event. So I think these, and again, this was focused on the peace process between us and the Palestinians. So I think these two speeches were very significant.
When you walked out of that conference and everybody had been there, did you really think in your heart that you were only a step or two away from some sort of historic agreement? Were you optimistic as you left that room?
Absolutely. I was optimistic because I think the most important, the most exciting thing about this process was that for the first time, the Palestinian leader and the leader of the State of Israel were sitting for hundreds of hours, one-on-one, in most cases in the study at the residence of the Prime Minister of Israel, and talking and creating a certain kind of more than just rapport. You know, it was kind of a personal relations and trust, which I don't think has ever existed before in that degree between an Israeli leader and a Palestinian leader. And I felt that we are coming close to the point where we have to take decisions. Ultimately, it lasted another year, and at the end, it didn't work out. But I think we were very, very, very close. I think there is a basis upon which we can build a peace agreement between us and the Palestinians even now. And I think that President Abbas, although he would definitely not recognize it publicly for obvious reasons, but I think he knows that he made a mistake, that at that time he didn't say yes. He never said no, by the way. I have to give him that credit. He never said no. So I know everyone says, you know, he's weak, he's unwilling, he will never make an agreement. He never said no. However, he never said yes. And so he said in interviews to the Israeli television, also to the Palestinian television, he showed with his hands, he showed, and he said, we were that close. Had Olmert been prime minister for another 3 months, there would have been an agreement between us and them. But I wasn't prime minister for another 3 months when it didn't continue. And now we can only regret.
Are you critical of your successor for not following up on what you had done?
Well, you know, I can't hide it that, you know, I spelled it out in the most explicit terms time and again inside Israel. I don't think that there is a peace policy for Israel. I don't think that there is any plan that is can lead towards an agreement. I have my complaints about the Palestinians. That's beside the point. But I am an Israeli, so I have to take care of my side and make sure that my side does all the right things that are needed in order to reach an agreement. And I think that, for instance, a unilateral annexation of any parts of the West Bank will be an historical, monumental mistake that can put the entire region into turmoil and upset the very fragile balance that we have. And I think it will be a dramatic mistake. But this is what Netanyahu keeps saying all the time that he wants to do. So I am different. Let's put it this way. I have a different approach. I think my approach is more realistic. I know it requires from Israel to take a certain risk, but I think that Israel is strong enough, is powerful enough, is stable enough, is capable of handling the risks for the prospect of achieving an historical breakthrough that will change the life of the entire Middle East and maybe more than just the Middle East.
So you know the current prime minister better than anyone other outside his family. You've worked with him and you've worked against him. Is he
Mostly
serious
against.
about? Mostly against.
I have to be honest with you, yes.
Is he
We were never
serious?
real partners, yeah. Is he serious about what?
Is he serious about annexation? Is he really going to go through with it? And you know the King of Jordan. The language that he used in the last 24 hours was as sharp as anything I've ever heard. Could this potentially break up the peace agreement between Jordan and Israel?
I think that that might be one of the outcomes of such unilateral action by the Prime Minister of Israel. And therefore, I hope, is he serious? I think he is. Did he talk about it time and again throughout the last year and a half of the 3 election campaigns that we had? Yes, he did. It's been discussed time and again. He actually wanted to even announce it officially on behalf of the caretaker government that he was holding a few months ago. So I think he's serious. I think that he, at the last minute, he will refrain from doing it, because if he will do it, the possible ramifications for the security of Israel, for the stability of Israel, for the relations between us and the Palestinians, and between us and all the Arab world, not just Jordan and Egypt, but all the Arab world, will be devastating. And I hope that he will become less populistic and more responsible for it.
So I'm going to ask you a question that I've never asked a world leader before. And you and I actually several times have been among them. And I'm a little nervous to ask it.
You're among them all the time.
But I want to know, inside your head, you've had to declare war, and you've had to be part of a loss of life.
Yeah.
What goes through your mind as you think about that, knowing that people will live or die based on the decisions that you make?
Well, the truth is that, at the time that I was prime minister, Israel was involved in 2 major military efforts, but I wouldn't say that these were wars, in the same way that wars were fought by Israel in 67, the 6-Day War, or the Yom Kippur War in 1973, or the Independence War. This was a very relatively limited military effort, but it's true, that when you give the order, that the almost inevitable outcome of it will be the loss of life of young Israelis. But at the time that I had to take that decision about the second war in Lebanon, or about the Cast-Lead operation in Gaza, which was also a major military operation, the situation was that hundreds of thousands of Israelis were threatened on a daily basis by rockets and missiles that were shot at them, and they costed lives of Israelis. And therefore, it was obvious that something must be done, and the primary responsibility of a leader of a nation is to protect his people. And I felt that this was my responsibility, and therefore I had to decide on doing this. But I can tell you, Frank, that there were hundreds of occasions in which I had to take a decision. And many prime ministers, not everyone, but quite a lot, and certainly the President of America and the presidents of other countries have to take decisions that may cost the lives of people in secret operations that are not publicized, that do not become part of the news on a daily basis, but which costed the lives of people and can cost the life of people. And in many such occasions, I had the people that I sent to make these operations in my office, or I went to the bases to shake hands with them. And sometimes I didn't see all of them back. And it's heartbreaking. But this is something that if someone wants to be president, if someone wants to be prime minister, he has to be able to cope with it. I can tell you one thing, though, that one time I went into a store in Jerusalem, or near Jerusalem, where I used to live, and there was a lady standing next to me in the store. And I knew who she was. She's a very famous family, but I wouldn't say the name. And they lost their son in the Second Lebanese War, which was obviously the most tragic event in their lives, and they have to live with the pain forever. And she looked at me and she said, "Mr. Olmert, the blood of my son is on your hands." And I looked at her and I say, I made a decision long time that I'll never argue with a parent who lost his son, because how can I match whatever I feel with what you have to go through all your lives? One thing, though, I want to tell you, that for the last, at that time, it was 10 years, now I can say 14 years, since that young man was killed in the war, there was not one bullet shot from the south of Lebanon towards Israel, and millions of people in the north part of Israel lives with safety and security that they never had before. So there was a meaning that I hope will give you a certain degree of satisfaction that your son did something which may have saved the lives of so many people. But I met with lots of parents that lost their children as part of the, of the feeling that you have when you take a decision to send them to the battlefield, also to be able to share with their families the pain that they have. And I can tell you that sometimes these meetings are not very pleasant, but you have to go through it.
What was her response to you?
What was their response to me?
What was her response to you when you said there's nothing you can match?
Well, yeah, I don't. It wasn't a pleasant meeting. It didn't end up, with any expression of from her side that she understands, or that she acquiesces or anything like that. But you have to take it. You have to take it. Their pain is something that I've never experienced. None of my children was lost in a war, and their children was. And this is their pain, and you have to respect it.
I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Donald Trump right before he became president. Do you pray for guidance? And have you ever prayed for forgiveness?
I don't pray, in the the simplistic term of the meaning of the term, but it never leaves me. It's part of my life. The pain of knowing that you gave the order, that as a result of it, young people lost their lives, is something that goes with me and will stay with me forever. And also the sights of all the many people that live in Jerusalem at the time that I was mayor of Jerusalem, and there were hundreds of suicidal attacks, and so many people were torn to pieces. And I literally was there 5 minutes after it happened, and sometimes, we collected pieces of bodies of people that 5 minutes before or 10 minutes before were just walking the street or sitting in a coffee shop or being in a school or being in a store, and they were brutally, savagely killed. These pictures are part of my life, and they will stay forever. You have to live with it.
So this is very hard to ask someone who's a Israeli leader, and I don't even know if you'll acknowledge it, because your predecessor, the current prime minister, would never say this. And I don't know if he's ever felt this emotion, but behind the doors in your home, did you ever cry?
In my heart.
So what is the greatest challenge now? I share your commitment to not just coexistence, but to Israelis and Palestinians living side by side with respect in a country. What is the greatest obstacle right now to peace in the Middle East?
Well, the greatest obstacle at this point in our history, in our lives, is the total lack of any contact, of any trust between the leaders of both sides, between the Prime Minister of Israel, and most likely he will be inaugurated in a couple of days, and also the President of the Palestinian Authority. I don't want to put a blame on this side or on the other side. I'm not a judge. I'm not objective. I'm an Israeli. I've invested all my life, all my energies, all my imagination, all my abilities to try and make the best for the people of Israel and for the state of Israel. I'm not sitting between Israel and the Palestinians. I'm on the Israeli side. But I think, therefore, that the question is not how to blame one side or the other, how to create a momentum of trust between the two leaders so that they will be able to sit together. And you know what? I told Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian leader, a while ago. I met with him in New York after President Trump presented his plan, and he was very upset with it. And I told him, listen, President Trump, it doesn't matter now what many think about particular certain aspects of the plan of President Trump, but the plan is based on a two-state solution, on a Palestinian state and, of course, on the state of Israel, side by side. Now, many parts of the concept of President Trump may be unacceptable to the Palestinians, but I say to President Abbas, if indeed the two-state, the creation of a Palestinian state, is a fundamental principle of the Trump plan, instead of saying what is not there, take this and go forward and sit with Netanyahu and say to him, ask him, do you agree? Do you agree that there will be a Palestinian state so we can sit and talk? And that is my advice today. I would say to my prime minister, go to the Palestinian leader and tell him, I'm prepared to have a Palestinian state based on, of course, negotiations and agreement on all the different details and security arrangements and so on and so forth. I've outlined the security arrangements which were adopted by both President Bush and President Obama for an agreement between Israel and the Palestinians based on the concept of a two-state solution. So I think Netanyahu should try and attract a Palestinian leader on that basis, and the Palestinian leader should accept to sit down on the basis of the commitment that the outcome of the negotiations will be the creation of a Palestinian state. I hope that they will do it. I hope that after the inauguration of the new government in Israel, maybe we'll do it. Am I optimistic? Not too much, but I hope.
Who are you more? I understand that you represented Israel and still do. Who is more likely to extend the hand first, Abbas or Netanyahu?
I hope they're Trump. I don't know about the two of them, but I hope they're Trump. I think that the Palestinians, moved away from what is important in order to create this momentum for negotiations, because they lost trust in the American president, and that's what they said. I think that the Israeli prime minister shifted his emphasis to the very extreme right, because he thought that this will be helpful to his re-election. And maybe it was helpful to increase the support that he received, although he never had any majority, and he still doesn't have a majority, and he relies on some partners to have a government. So it's hard to say who is more likely in terms of the public expressions. I think both sides are not yet close to do what I think is important.
So I'm taking questions as I do this, and I've got one from Billy Marovitz, who you probably eat in one of his restaurants,
Yep.
either in DC or Chicago. And he
Great
asks,
restaurant.
he's very talented. Do you think the new government of Israel realizes how distant they are from the American Jewish community because of things they've said, because of decisions they've made? There really is a split between American Jews and the government.
Well, I'm not in a position to be able to judge or to agree or disagree with Mr. Marovitz on his judgment about the distance, but I do have many friends in the Jewish community in America, and I know how unhappy they are with the dominance of the ultra-Orthodox section in the government that distanced Israel almost entirely from a major part of the Jewish people, the Reform Jews and the conservative Jews. And I think that this must be changed. This was my policy. I as Prime Minister, even as Mayor of Jerusalem, I recognized, and I was very cooperative with both the Reform and the conservative schools, which are part of the Jewish people and a very important part, and definitely very important part of the Jewish community in America. So this must be changed, and I think that what he talked about in terms of the distance or in terms of the separation is referring to this. Maybe also the majority of the Jews in America are traditionally Democrats, and I'm not sure that they were quite happy with what appeared to have been a very close alliance and support of the government of Israel in the last few years to one side of the American body politics. We always relied on the bipartisan support for the state of Israel, and I think that we always expressed our support for both sides. And I think that quite a few Jews were unhappy with the fact that the Prime Minister of Israel sided completely with the Republicans. They are great friends of Israel, but the Democrats are also great friends of Israel, and we have to be friends with both.
You have a coalition government. This is the number one question of them all. Benny Gantz comes from the center. He does not share the prime minister's point of view. Is that going to give Israel balance? Will he have some authority? Will he be able to have some impact on the current government that's about to be affirmed in 48 hours?
This is certainly the main question. It's true not only about the viewers of this particular program, but this is what most Israelis ask. I don't know to answer this. I thought I had different expectations from Gantz. He's a decent guy, and he's a serious guy, and he's a centrist, as you correctly said. And but he separated from the a major part of the list that was partnering with him in the last elections, and he has a very important position in the government. But the truth is that he doesn't have the votes if and when there will be a conflict between him and Netanyahu. So it remains to be seen whether he will be able to use the particular position that he has now in the government to force Netanyahu into a different direction. I don't know to answer this, but I can't say yes to what you said. I hope that he will do it, but it remains to be seen.
You mentioned the word conflict, and I apologize, but I have to read this because I've not memorized it. It's one of the greatest quotes I've ever read about peace. You wrote it in a UK newspaper back in 2007. And in your words, I take the offer of full normalization of relations between Israel and the Arab world seriously. Working with our Jordanian and Egyptian partners and hopefully other Arab states, we must pursue a comprehensive peace with energy and vision, but the talks must be a discussion, not an ultimatum. How are we going to get there? I love that line, a discussion, not an ultimatum, but it looks like we've got two people in charge, both on, and not just the West Bank, but also Gaza, and sitting in the Prime Minister's office that are not good with these kinds of negotiations. How do we get beyond?
Frank, I think I can repeat what I said before. I think that there should be an entirely different approach from both sides. I'm more sensitive, obviously, to my side. I think that there should be more compassion, more tolerance, better understanding for the needs of the Palestinians, awareness of the fact that for the last 53 years, we are occupying them, not they us. And there were many good historical reasons why it happened, but there were many important historical opportunities to depart from that status into something entirely different. Now that the most important, the most significant change between now and 67, in 67, Israel was weak, Israel was encircled from all sides, and we were vulnerable. In 2020, Israel is the most powerful nation in the entire Middle East. No one can threaten us, no one can destroy us, no one can put into question, into jeopardy, the existence of the state of Israel. We have no strategic threat to the very existence of Israel. This is entirely different from everything that we had in the past. So now we can afford to be more generous, more forthcoming. And we must understand that without a Palestinian state, there will not be peace. And in order to achieve a Palestinian state, we'll have to pull out from territories which historically we believe are a part of the state of the Jewish people. We're part of the prayers and the yearnings of the Jewish people in thousands of years. But if you want to achieve something which may change entirely the security, the safety of the people of Israel and the entire Middle East, and also offer an horizon which we don't have today of living in an entirely different environment of relations between us and all the Arab countries, you must make concessions which will break our hearts. This is not easy. This is not simple. I said perhaps the most difficult moment in my life was when I sat with Mahmoud Abbas and I told him that I am prepared to establish a Palestinian state on the basis of the 67 borders, which means that we'll have to pull out from a majority part of the territories, except for a few centers that were agreed to and swaps of territories that we offered. It's not easy, but we are strong enough to take the risk. We are powerful enough to defend the state of Israel against any threat. So we have to make this forthcoming proposal. And I urge the Palestinian side that it will have the wisdom and the imagination to jump on the opportunity that they missed in 2008 and say that they will be ready to sit down to the table of negotiations and sign peace momentarily if this will be the position of Israel. They have to say it.
Well, I have a Republican congressman who says that the Palestinians are not a direct threat to Israel, but the Iranian government is. Number one, do you regret not removing that threat when you were prime minister because they'd begun to develop nuclear weapons? They may not have had them, but the program began while you were prime minister. And number two, do you want the U.S. to deal with it, or should Iran just be left alone?
No, I think, number one, Iran is a problem. I entirely agree with the congressman that Iran is a problem. It's a serious problem. It's not an existential threat to the state of Israel. Excuse me. We know how to deal with Iran. By the way, their nuclear plan started long before I became prime minister, long before even Sharon, before me, became prime minister, and we all dealt with it. And we dealt with it very effectively without making many statements. We dealt with it in many different ways. When I can say that when I was vice prime minister of Israel, and I was in this small group of ministers that dealt on a daily basis with the Iranian threat, the Israeli intelligence experts advised us then in 2003, 2004, that by 2008, the Iranians will have a nuclear capacity. And in 2009, they definitely will have an atomic bomb. Now it's 2020. They still don't have it. And they don't have it for a variety of reasons. Because of things that were done by many in order to prevent them. And by the way, I have to say that the agreement that was signed by President Obama, and this was the opinion of every single Israeli who had anything to say about nuclear and about the threats to Israel, was a positive agreement. It wasn't the best possible agreement that could have been signed, but it was a positive agreement. My position was, and I spelled it out time and again, is that Israel must deal with Iran, but it has to be led, the effort to prevent Iran from possessing nuclear capacity has to be led by the superpowers, first and foremost by the United States of America. And at the time, by the way, that I was prime minister, there were already serious efforts made by President George W. Bush in order to sanction Iran and in order to prevent them from possessing this capacity. I think that this effort was continued at the time that Obama was president of America. And I never thought that it has to be resolved by a Israeli military operation. I think it was a mistake to even put it on the table. It has to be led by the United States. And I'm quite confident that President Trump is absolutely committed to make sure that the Iranians will not have nuclear capacity. And I trust that he is serious and very serious about it.
So but you don't believe that we have to go back to the agreement that Obama signed?
The truth is that, to the best of my knowledge, and I think I know something about it, it was never violated by Iran then. It may have been violated since then because America actually, canceled its part in it. So I think that there were things that were done which were not in line with the original agreement. But I think that there should be an effort led by America and by President Trump in order to reach an understanding with Iran. I think it's possible. I must say that if President Trump is happy with the developments in North Korea, then I think that he should exert now an additional effort to try and stop the Iranians.
I'm going to leave it at that. It's a domestic question, but it's something that a lot of people in this call care about, which is cooperation, bipartisanship, centrism. You represented Israel not from the right, but from the center. You started in the right, but you moved to the center.
Yeah,
and you were able to be the head of the country.
That's right.
What you're able to achieve, and Israel's got the most brutal political system of any democracy I know. It is mean and it is vicious, and they make stuff up, and it's a nightmare.
Is Israel the only one, by the way? Frank, is Israel the only one?
Are
you sure that we are the only one which who have a brutal and aggressive political system? You know, I heard some of the things that are said in the campaign, in the presidential campaign in America, and I'm not sure that we have set the worst standard. So,
well, it is.
Let's leave it at this.
Okay.
Well, we have a very aggressive system. We have a very aggressive system, and the narrative has changed completely. I mean, there is no question about it. What was, you know, when I was running for mayor of Jerusalem against the legendary Teddy Kollek 27 years ago, and I defeated him. It was a very tough campaign, and they were quite brutal against me, but nothing near. Or when I ran for prime minister in 2006 and I defeated Netanyahu, this was the worst defeat he ever suffered in his life. But in 2006, the Likud party got only 12 mandates for the Knesset, which was the lowest that they ever got in the history of the party. So it was aggressive, but there is no near what it is today. And I think that it's true not just in Israel, it's true also in America, it's true also in Great Britain. We have seen what was taking place in Great Britain in the last couple of years about the Brexit and the confrontations between Labour and the Tories and so on. So the narrative, the fake news, the social networks have changed completely the nature of the political campaigns. They are not what they used to be. I think the last political campaign, which was still along the traditional lines in America, was the 2008.
Yes,
because President Obama was at that time like a rock star. I remember that some of my Republican friends used to say to me that they don't know how to deal with him. They say that, you know, if he has a big rally in Washington or in New York or in any place, there are hundreds of thousands of people coming to these places. No more. I mean, these kind of political events have disappeared completely because everything is done in a different way. And fake news and you know, the talkbacks on the networks are so aggressive and are so brutal and are so unlimited in the vicious language that they use that I think it's true about Israel. It was very, very true about the last 3 election campaigns we had in Israel. I think it can change. I hope that the spirit that Gantz represents will somehow inspire a different dialogue in Israeli politics, but I'm not certain.
And that's why I do these. And there are people who come on, and it's one of the reasons why I disabled the chat and why I tell people who Google me or who text me. I've got this constant conversation going on while you and I are talking, and occasionally people are asking me, hit him hard, attack him. I had Kevin McCarthy on last week. I had Joe Lieberman on the week before. I've got Tony Blair coming on in a week. I will not do that because I don't want to contribute to the environment that you speak of, particularly the environment on cable news and social media. And I want to ask you, there are so many people who want to see our politics in a more centrist, a more open, cooperative way. You and I may agree that we need to do it. Is there a strategy in mind, not just to inspire it, but is there a strategy for somebody like you, either in Israel or America, that wants to take a center approach that you would recommend to them that would make them more successful?
Well, I certainly can't speak about America. I don't know. I know that now, of course, there is going to be the campaign will, I think, resurface in a matter of weeks in America, and Vice President Joe Biden will fight against the incumbent President Trump, and I'm not sure that I don't know to say what will be the exact nature of this dialogue or exchange or battle between the two of them, whether it will be between the extreme right and the center, or whether it will be between a more moderate right and a more moderate center to left. I don't know. I think, strangely enough, I think that the last 3 election campaigns in Israel proved that, against the initial expectations or anticipations, there is not a majority for the right wing in Israel. There is not a majority. The fact that after 3 election campaigns, Netanyahu finally seems to succeed to build a coalition is because the centrist party, blue and white, which was equal in size, more or less, to the Likud, broke up because of everything has changed with the coronavirus and the atmosphere that it has created. But the elections campaigns themselves didn't produce a majority for either side. And unfortunately, I think that the 2 major parties seem not to want to have a dialogue with the Arab party, which has now a very significant representation in the Knesset. I think it's a great mistake. I think that the Arab party in the Knesset should be part of the Israeli government. They should participate in forming the leadership of Israel and influencing the policies of the state of Israel, of which they are citizens. They are 20% Israeli Arab citizens of the state of Israel. They should be part of the process. So because the Arabs are not counted somehow, their appearance is that the right wing has a majority, but there is not. It's not true. They don't have a majority, and therefore, if there will be a person, a leader, okay, will surface, who is powerful enough and determined enough, and is prepared to be unpopular for a period of time, which in my judgment, in my eyes, is ultimately the bottom line of what is a true leadership, is the courage to be unpopular. Do you know one in America who has the courage to be unpopular? I think that if there will be one in Israel that will be prepared to face the serious issues that we have to face, including most of all, I think, the Palestinian issue, and also the relations within the Jewish communities between the ultra-Orthodox and the secular Jews and the Reform Jews and the conservative Jews and the others, I think that he will be much more popular than what we think now, based on the political pattern that we have at the present time.
So I know that it is almost 1 a.m. your time, and I want people to know that you got up or stayed up for me. and I'm grateful. And so I promise to wrap this up in the next 5 minutes. But I've got another quote of yours, and I did not know. I'm sorry that we have to do this through the computer, because if I saw this and I read it to you directly, I would be all choked up. How are fears born? You know these words. They are born because of differences in tradition and history. They are born because of differences in emotional, political, and national circumstances. Because of such differences, people fear they cannot live together. If we are to overcome such fear, a credible and healthy political process must be carefully and painfully developed. A political process that does not aim to change the other or to overcome differences, but that allows each side to live peacefully in spite of their differences. Mr. Prime Minister, that is so beautiful. I deal with this as a student, as a professor at NYU Abu Dhabi, as I reach out to other students, many of them of Arab descent, and they say we have to learn to live together. We have to learn to tolerate each other. Again, as one of the final questions, what do you say to those who push BDS, boycotts, divestment, and sanctions, as a way to force Israel to end, in their words, occupation and to bring about a Palestinian state? Surely that is not part of your vision for how we are going to live together.
I'll answer you on two levels. Okay. Number one, I think the BDS are the enemies of peace. They will not bring peace. They will not help the Palestinians. They will do the opposite of what they want. And I think that this is just a vicious expression of intolerance, which is not helpful for anything. And I'm not certain that all those that support the BDS are really motivated by this desire to have the Palestinians. I think that this is part of the traditional anti-Israeli attitude, which is interpreted or which is adapted into these arguments for the wrong reasons. But I want to return back to the quotations that you read. And I want to tell you a story which in a way reflects what is said there. When I was elected mayor of Jerusalem, Jerusalem is perhaps the most complex city in the world. I don't know if it's the most difficult. You know, the mayor of New York always, both Rudy Giuliani and Michael Bloomberg always, when we talked about it, they always thought that New York is more complex than Jerusalem, and maybe they are right, I don't know. But Jerusalem is the most divided in terms of the different sections of populations. You have Arabs, Muslims, and Christians. You have Jews, secular and observant. You have observant Jews who are moderate observant, and you have Orthodox. You have Orthodox which are Hasidic and Orthodox which are not Hasidic. You have ultra-Orthodox. Now, all of these are separate groups, and there is a lot of tension that is part of life amongst the different sections of this population. Now, when I was elected, lots of people were quite concerned. They thought that somehow my predecessor, Teddy Kollek, was very successful in keeping a certain balance among them, which I don't, you know, it's not the time now to discuss that part of our history. But many important people and many seasoned and experienced people came to me and they said, you must make an exceptional, extraordinary effort to build a common ground for all these separate groups in order to reduce the possible tension amongst them. And you know what? This was the worst advice I ever got. Why? Because what I found out very, very rapidly is that this was interpreted by the different group as a threat to their self-identity, which was separated, and that they wanted to maintain it, the uniqueness and the identity that they have built up, separate. And when I started to come with ideas of how to reduce these differences, they interpreted it as a threat to their very unique identity, which is part of their tradition of history that they wanted to maintain and keep and protect at any cost. So the bottom line, the answer that I found, which is reflected in what you quoted, is what we need to do is to create a space for everyone to live within that framework where each one can keep his identity and let the other to keep his identity and not interfere with his way of life. And building this space is to protect the traditions, the beliefs, the affiliations, the histories, the prayers, which are different for different groups. And that's what I try to do in Jerusalem.
And you're doing it in your own home. And your wife, if she's still up, is listening to this interview right now. And I know that she doesn't.
So, yes.
I know she doesn't
used to.
share.
No, you're talking about history. I improved. I used to be a minority in my family because I was much to the right and my wife was never. And my children, which every one of them is, they all are very accomplished people and very successful, each in his own area of activities and interest. Gorgeous kids that I have, grown-ups with families, many grandchildren. But I was a minority. And everyone used to ask me many times, we asked, how can you tolerate the fact that your wife or your children don't agree with you? And I say, do I have to answer why I tolerate it? I am grateful every day that they tolerate me in spite of the fact that I'm a minority in the family. But this was true about 15 years ago. In the meantime, I have changed a little bit. And I think that we found a common ground where I think when I was prime minister and my policies towards the Palestinians were something that all my family supported. And I think that they do support what I say today about these issues. So the division in the Olmert family has been reduced dramatically. And I can only say that due to their tolerance, for many, many years, I was kept in the family, which I'm very proud of.
Final question, sir. I'm 58. I desperately, one of my missions in life, someone asked me on a walk the other day, what are my 3 goals in life? And one of them is, or 3 prayers, and one of them is peace between Israel and her neighbors. Oh, and actually, I do have to ask, I'm sorry, don't kill me. You began this interview, and I've never known the answer to this. You call it the state of Israel rather than Israel. You don't call it the state of Britain, the state of the UK, the state of France, the state of anything else. Why do we call it the state of Israel and not Israel? I really don't know.
Maybe because Israel something that described not just the Israelis, but the Jews also. So the state of Israel is the state of Israel, not just all the Jewish people, which in the Bible, it was the Israelites and so on and so forth. So maybe this is the reason for the distinction between Israel and the state of Israel. But it's Israel and the state of Israel. It's all right. It's the same.
I'm 58. Will there be peace in my lifetime?
There will be peace in my lifetime, and I'm much older than you are. I am optimist.
Why are you so sure?
Why am I so sure? First of all, because I want to live much longer. And also because I think that peace is achievable. I think that peace is achievable. We know what it takes to make peace. In order to have peace with the Palestinians, and don't misread me. When I say that we can sign peace with the Palestinians, I don't mean to say that overnight all the extremists, mostly amongst them, will disappear. That will not happen. But this is the first breakthrough that will change history. And so we have to sign it. And what it takes is to agree to have a Palestinian state They will be based on the 67 borders with the necessary changes and swap of territories as was prescribed by me in my historic plan that was given to Mahmoud Abbas, which was actually agreed by President Bush and by President Obama, both great friends of the State of Israel and people that were very much concerned and sensitive to the security and the well-being of the State of Israel. And the Palestinians will have to accept the minor changes and to try and to cope with their own internal issues. Mostly they're extremists that are still trying to upset the balance in our region. So I think that what it takes to make the agreement is well known, and it will not change. This is it. What we need is a leadership that has the courage to change its positions. By the way, you know that one of my idols is the late Prime Minister of Israel, Menachem Begin. Menachem Begin, when he became Prime Minister, everyone expected him to announce the unilateral annexation of Sinai and of the West Bank. He didn't do either this or the other. He made peace with Egypt and he pulled out entirely from Sinai, which was different from everything that he said until he became Prime Minister. But this is the true leadership, historic leadership, is the ability, the power, the inner strength. When you are in a position of responsibility, of historic responsibility, to do things which are different from what you said, but which are the right things at the right time for the people that you lead. This will be the challenge of the coming government of the State of Israel. And I hope, I pray that they will rise to this challenge.
Well, we need you to stay healthy. There's a phrase, from your lips to God's ears. I'm proud to have known you for 32 years. I am a pessimist as you are an optimist, but you've given me hope. Someday, I hope to be the very first person to teach in Israel, Palestine, and Jordan. I actually hope
Take me
do
to
that.
one. Take me to one of them. Okay, with you.
Yes, I will reach out to you to speak to them. We are grateful. I want
Thank
to
you very
wish
much.
you a very good night, and please be safe. Please be healthy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.